Welcome to the OC. I'm Phil. This is my co-host Corey, and tonight we are talking about John Wayne Gacy.
Wait. So you said John Wayne last time. Are you telling me I can't use all my Duke-based research?
Sorry, buddy. Wrong John Wayne. Jesus.
Damn it. I was like, I don't know how this fits in with the storylines we're doing, but
I know.
damn, I like the Duke.
Did I leave out Gacy? That was
might have said that part quiet.
That's a pretty important part. Yeah. John Wayne Gacy. What a guy. I mean, as far as serial killers go, he's right up there. He's like on everybody's at least top 5. I would think.
Okay. Anytime you get the weirdness.
Yeah.
That he's like, thank you for ruining clowns for everybody, John.
Oh my God. I hated clowns before I knew about this guy.
Yeah.
I'm not a clown guy. And that's weird. There's like a big portion of the population that really doesn't like clowns.
He was prolific. I think that's one of the things. And like he did it for what, 10 years ish?
Not even. I think like from 72 to 78. He got caught and then he was. But I think what makes him so fascinating to most people is that he was really fucking normal. Like he had a normal life. Like he could balance this normal life.
You say normal life.
Okay, well,
some of the stuff that came up, and I'm sure you've come across it too.
No, okay. Yes. Yeah. Well, we'll get into that later.
Like normal life, I guess a normal 70s life, I guess.
Yeah, there was some weird shit he did. But are you talking about with the JCs and stuff? Yeah, okay.
The Waterloo JC. Anyway.
Yeah, let's not get
ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, I'd really like to talk about his childhood first, because I think that...
Tell me about your childhood, John.
How you came to be so prolific.
You sound like Dracula. You sound more like Dracula.
I do not say blah, blah, blah. So he was born in 1942 in Chicago. His dad was John Stanley Gacy. So John, born like a normal kid, two parents.
He had a congenital heart disease, like a
congenital
heart defect, right?
Yeah, they found that out later. His dad was a real like manly man, right? Like he would have been like a lot of the men we knew growing up.
A lot of my uncles scared the hell right out of me. They were very
grow hair on your chest and be a man. God
hold
damn
your hand near the fire.
Yeah,
it hurts. Right? It burns. It seems like a terrible thing to do.
If I see a tear, I'll punch you in the face.
I'll give you I'm sure your grandfather said the same thing.
Yeah. I'll give you something to cry about.
I'll give you something to cry about. Like, okay, thanks.
But that's a long way from your heart. That was a good one too. Right. I love that. Stop crying, you baby. It's a long ways from your heart.
My dad used to say it's not the dirt that goes in you that kills you, it's the dirt that comes out. And I'm sitting there like covered in blood and after being dragged around the yard by the dog.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just thinking, I was young, so maybe infection control was not a big thing. I didn't get infected, but still.
Right.
Still, it just seems like not great medical advice.
No. And it's funny you mentioned the Duke, because the mom, I think, depends who you read. Apparently it was the mom who was infatuated with John Wayne, the Duke, the man. Yeah. And that's why they named him John Wayne.
Didn't Preston Nichols, his mom loved Yul Brynner? Like she had a little shrine. Do you think it was something similar like that? Like they had Mama Gacy had a shrine to the Duke?
He was a mama's boy. He fucking, and I know I have a mama's boy. He very much loves his mama. And, but yeah, like his father basically was like a vampire. So as Gacy grew, he got kind of heavy. So he was overweight. Which his father would tease him relentlessly about. Just belittle him at any chance, that he could. And especially because John Wayne seemed to want to do things like gardening. He didn't really want it, like he wanted to help his mom in the garden. And he wanted to do things that weren't, especially back then, like you're talking like, so 42 he was born, 50s. Like this guy is like, men don't garden.
No, they do yard work. So I was doing yard work today. So I was.
Yeah. Oh, you're a real man. Of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Spending 20 minutes trying to get a lawnmower going and realizing, why don't I spend $500 and just buy a new lawnmower?
Or put gas in it. I don't know. But no. So he was basically, his father did not see him as a boy that he wanted.
He was very emasculated as a.
That's right.
Yes.
And I think to a lot of young men, that's something that they look to their fathers for reassurance and guidance, acceptance, right? And when you don't find that, which I mean, not everyone does. I mean, we all have our little like, oh God, did my daddy love me? I mean, there's always those moments.
I can say my dad loved me very much. We might not have agreed on a lot of things, but I would certainly say that we were also for two very different people though too. So that's why we disagree.
Of course. And but he was also an alcoholic, John Stanley, right? So John Stanley Gacy he worked as an auto mechanic machinist. So he built parts. So he was in the trade of being sort of a manly man. And, and then he would come home and get drunk in the basement by himself. Sounds like middle America right there.
There we go.
And then he would, a lot of times John would catch a beating, and so would his wife, or not John's wife, or John Stanley's wife, Gacy's mom.
Mama Gacy. We'll call her Mama Gacy.
Let's call her Mama Gacy.
Yeah.
And,
Mama Gacy.
And she tried her best to, they were all scared. So, I think a lot of that.
It's your typical domestic partnership where you have the abusive husband and takes it out on, he runs into problems in his life and he takes it out on the other part of his life.
Well, this was a time too where men could fucking beat their wives, and cops would, oh yeah, it's your wife. You guys, what happens in your house is your business, right? It was a different era. It wasn't the same.
Not acceptable, but it was.
Oh, it wasn't. Well, I mean, it's totally unacceptable behavior, but back then, I mean, it was sort of a hush hush thing, right? Yeah. People just sort of dealt with it.
Unless they showed up dead.
Well, and this is a lot of wives killed their husbands because, the police weren't going to help them. So, this is fucking slow. I make your meals, fucker. So, guess what?
That's right. You sleep. You go to sleep, right?
I'm going to sprinkle a little of this in here. Yeah, you got to sleep at some point. So we know that he has a bad relationship with his father. But, so there's some other things that I found interesting as well. So when he was 5 years old, apparently he was being babysat by a 15-year-old girl. And this 15-year-old girl touched him inappropriately. And then she actually got caught by the mother. The mother had a feeling that something wasn't right, that motherly instinct. Yeah. And caught him, or not him, he was 5 years old. But caught her, and then, I don't know what, nothing became of it, I guess. But, and then at 8 years old, he was assaulted by one of his dad's friends who was a contractor. And this guy was 30 years old. And he used to take young Gacy to, ball games, and then, he would touch him inappropriately. So there's a history of abuse.
There's a history of molestation and abuse.
Yeah. And then this is really common in a lot of these criminal, and it doesn't justify what they've done, obviously, but it does kind of builds a picture of, he's probably very feminine in his
and they're, everything you see about John Wayne Gacy strongly suggests that he was a closeted homo. I don't think he ever actually came out as being an official.
No,
but I don't know because of the era. It was 70s, and it was quasi illegal. I think this where they were
faking being who he was. His father disapproved. Can you imagine if he came out? I mean, it would. So his father played a huge role in his life. So let's move on to when he leaves home. So it's 1960, or no, it's in that era. This is where he learns about his heart condition. So he ends up fainting. He's in a school for learning how to do printing press operator or whatever it is.
A growing profession.
Yeah, it's like a school, a trade school, right? Yep. And then he ends up passing out 3 times. Using the machine, out he goes. So then he was diagnosed with this heart condition, and basically he's told, okay, you can't do this. This is not you cannot work with machinery. You will kill someone or yourself.
So the true, to just so we can conclude, the true evil in all of this is the doctor that gave him that advice. If the doctor had said, you know what, you work with this machinery, yeah, you're good. If he'd signed off on that,
you never know.
33 people would still be alive right now.
Because John Wayne Gacy was he was relatively old to start killing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, who knows? I'm not sure the exact age, but he was, pretty established.
It was 70s when stuff started to go down.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not like he started killing in his 20s.
No.
Like, this was after
he was experimenting with who he was. So, yeah. Like,
yes. That's a word for it.
Yeah. Well, he leaves home so in 1960 is when he learns of this heart condition. His dreams are crushed. At 22, he leaves home. So 1964, and he basically says, all right, I'm out of here. My dad just fucking hates my guts, and I'm going to try this on my own. And he is actually very successful. He starts working for this shoe company, and this is also kind of the same time that he joins the JCs, which is the Junior, what's it called? Junior or something? Chamber of Commerce.
I just know Waterloo JCs. I was trying to pull it up, and
so it's the Junior Chamber of Commerce, and what it is like an all boys sort of group, right? It's a business sort of group, but he starts to hobnob with all these like politicians, and there's pictures of him with like governor of Illinois and different things, right? So
he was pictured with First Lady Rosalind Carter at one point.
He was too, and actually that'll be on our thumbnail. But yeah, so he's finding that he's being accepted.
So, and it's funny you mentioned being accepted. So at this time, he got married between when he left and joined the JC's thing, right? I can't remember his wife's name, but her father owned a chain of KFCs, and he actually was a manager at one of them.
Right.
And what he would apparently do to these JC events is he would bring buckets of chicken. And he would do all sorts of things. And they insisted they call him the Colonel.
So he insisted all his employees also call him the Colonel. And he would wear one of those little ties that the Colonel used to wear.
Like that bank I had.
There's pictures of him. I actually, terrifying piggy bank. So he gets married to Marilyn Myers in 1964. And, she's happy. He seems to be happy. But yeah, I'll get to the KFCs in a second because, the night that his first child was born, so this is 1966, February 24th, and he admits this, he was having a sexual encounter with a man. So he's out. His wife is in labor. Now, it's not odd that they weren't there during the labor.
It was at the time it was common for men not to be present during labor because reasons.
Oh, I've seen it. It's crazy what a woman goes through, and terrifying.
It's that apple. If they hadn't given us the apple, we'd be the ones. If we'd given them the apple, we'd be having the childbirth.
I would not be having a child. I mean, like,
nope. If guys had to bear children, we'd be like, nope. Species dies out.
That looks like it hurts, like a lot. You just end up with a newfound respect for your wife. You're just like, I can't believe you did that. Whoa. Anyway, he has a kid. He has his first. He gets to everything is great in his life. He's like, I'm working. He managed actually all three. So her father owned 3 KFCs, and he was like the big enchilada, right? Like he was the boss of bosses. So everything is going good. This is where he moves to Waterloo, Iowa. So he's first at, where did he go? It was Springfield, Illinois is where he first started with the shoe company. Then he goes to Iowa.
That's where he starts managing the...
Yeah, that's where all the KFCs are. And then he gets involved with the Iowa JCs. So the Junior Chamber of Commerce. That's what JCC. Right? And then he starts to do some weird shit. This is where some weirdness begins.
Sounded like a complete swingers club. Like some of the stuff I was reading about it was basically they were doing wife swapping, prostitution, pornography, and drug use. Like, it sounded like it was a bit of a swingers club for dudes.
It's not necessarily the club. So that wasn't something that the club did. So what happened was he wanted to become very, set into this club. He wanted to be like vice president or even president of the club one day, which he did become.
Yeah, he served on the board of directors.
Yeah, well, he became the president of that chapter. It would be like the Rotary. I'm assuming they're like similar, club. Or the Lions or Freemasons. Whatever. That's an all boys club generally. But what he would do is he would get more members. And how he would lure members was often through KFC and through different people that he knew. And then he would have he started with renting a hotel. And in the hotel, he would do pornos. So he'd have pornographic movies. And back then that was a big deal. It wasn't like you could just go on your phone or on the internet. It was everywhere. It's everywhere now. But
it was the stuff you'd see people would bring out at the stag films.
That's right. They called them stag films, and it was a big deal. Like like anything. Even even when we were kids, nobody had porn. Somebody had a porn book or something. It was like, whoa.
I seem to remember a party once where they put on an old VHS tape. Like really old, and it was just bad.
Yeah, a lot of hair probably. Very hairy people. But so times have changed, obviously. But so he would entice these people, and then it moved to having orgies, which you've mentioned. Lots of orgies, and that would also entice. One night he got 20 members. 20 members. So if you can imagine, it must have been a hell of an orgy. So by getting more people to join, he kind of climbed the ranks of the JCs. And that's right. He ended up, swapping wives and
it sounded like a complete swingers club. Everything I was reading about it. So unlike a lot of these things, when you talk about all the sex and orgies, there was no satanic influences. There was no ideology behind it. It was literally just.
Yeah. And what I read was
just what it was.
It wasn't really like that before him. Like he sort of, he brought this, and it wasn't all of them, obviously, but it was his.
It's enough of them to be significant that it was associated with it, rather than him and a couple buddies. Yeah, there was a bit of a corrupting influence.
No, and I think that anyone who would be enticed by we're gonna have an orgy. You're enticing the wrong kind of people to join your organization to begin with. So here you are, let's you got a bunch of perverts that are, or whatever. Hey, whatever floats your boat.
Like the man said, Phil, I wouldn't want to be a member of any club that would have me as a member.
Oh, me either. Yeah. Which brings us, so in 1967, he becomes the president of the JCs, and life is like, he's high on his life. But he's also battling with this urge to be with men. And that brings us to his first victim, but
Donald?
So Donald Voorhees, which.
Quick question, quick quiz. Voorhees. Do you know where that name's, does that name sound familiar to you at all?
Jason Voorhees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, just so people know,
Friday the 13th.
He didn't have an intimate encounter with Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th.
This was Donald, his illegitimate son or something. I don't know. No, poor Donald, though, was 15 years old. So his father was a member of the JCs, of course, right? So this is how John Wayne Gacy sort of, he found a victim. He found someone, and he would invite him over to the house to do stuff. Shows the kid a porno first time by himself. So he's showing this young boy porn, which is what the fuck. And then he forces himself on the boy, and nothing really happens of it. He pays him $50 to basically keep his mouth shut. And he threatens him. He says, listen, I know people in the mob. I'm going to fucking kill you if you say anything. And this poor kid's like, oh shit, what just happened? I just got raped, and basically, yeah. So nothing much happens right away. And then you can guess what he does, right? He rats fucking John Wayne Gacy out.
About a year later, actually. Roughly about a year later, he does it.
And then he's arrested. And he's arrested for sodomy, which if you're not familiar with what sodomy is.
Look it up on the internet.
Yes. It is.
Google it. Safe search on, though.
Safe search. Google sodomy. Sodom and Gomorrah.
So it's interesting with this, because this is the Donald Voorhees report narked him out, right?
Yeah.
Reported this to the cops. And I think he actually went to his parents first.
It was his parents.
And then his parents went to the cops. And to avoid getting him to testify, Gacy thought it was a good idea to pay one of his employees to go rough Voorhees up and try to intimidate him.
See, I didn't read that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so here.
Can I believe it? I mean, that's...
Gacy persuaded one of his employees, 18-year-old Russell Schroeder, to physically assault Voorhees in an effort to discourage the boy from testifying.
Wow.
He promised to pay Schroeder $300. Schroeder agreed, and Schroeder lured Voorhees to a park and then sprayed mace in his eyes and beat him. Yeah, and then
I didn't read
Voorhees
that part.
Got away and reported it to the police, and then Schroeder turned on Gacy and said, "Well, he paid me to do it."
Yeah, well, and then John Wayne Gacy says to the cop, "Give me a lie detector test," and Gacy's like, he failed every single question on the lie detector test. The only one that he was truthful on was his name. Which surprising. So yeah, he pleads guilty to the sodomy charge and gets 10 years in jail. And in the state pen. And he actually fucking fits in. He starts to make friends with the guards, and he starts to make friends with the other inmates. He's like the Jimmy Gitz or whatever, or Leo Gitz. I can't remember.
Leo Gitz.
Is it Leo Gitz?
Guy. He apparently got a raise for like the commissary worker. He did a bunch of stuff. Like he actually indispensable.
Cook. And in prison, everybody knows the cooks are the rock stars of the prison, right? Not just anybody becomes a cook.
I did not know that.
Yeah, no, cooks got a great job, and they also get their own cell block, right? And a lot of times, because they're working and they're doing things, you have to be of a certain, level. And then you get
trust, respectability.
Yeah, so you have to earn that. You don't just become a cook. And that's everybody wants to be a cook because they get special treatment. They can watch TV a little longer, maybe, the guards are a little. So he doesn't just become a cook. He becomes like the top cook. And he actually changes a lot of their menu. And it's good. He actually makes it on a television show. I can't remember the name of the television show, but he's being interviewed because of how he's changed the quality of the food to such a degree that the inmates are they're ecstatic. It's like really good home cooked meals instead of put your tray out and get your slop.
Here we go. Put your tray into the spigot.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of to show how adaptable he is. His father's like, you're a loser, but wherever he goes, he is becoming whatever people need him to become. If it's the best at being a JC, he's not afraid to do whatever it takes.
Which again, it's funny you mentioned the best at being the JC.
Yeah.
He clearly identified a problem, recruitment, and said, well, how do I go off and increase recruitment? Hey, so this is what we talked about in previous episodes about the dark triad, where there are some things where it's like people, you can be very problem solving orientated if you don't care about
morality.
How you solve the problem.
That's right. And that's what he did. And that's even in prisons, he became very much the go-to guy. He could help people, right? To find what they want so he could get what he wanted.
Apparently in prison, he was very outspoken, anti-gay.
Very.
So as a closeted, he was so closeted, he was like, it's that inverse, when you hit the Pac-Man score of 999 and it flips over to 0. That's basically, it was him. He was like, no, gays are terrible, bad gays.
Yeah, and I think that's brought on too because his father used to call him a sissy, and there was what are you, a man or a woman? Being just an absolute asshole.
But he's in prison, which traditionally is where you would, I mean, at least nowadays, it's associated with, hey, a bunch of dudes hanging out. There's probably some stuff going on.
Right? Oh yeah, but
he was very much against that when he was in there.
It's funny you say that because there is sex in prison. There always has been. I mean, when we used to do shower, like, because you have to be in there when they're having showers, right? And you have to count heads. And you'd be like, there's 10 heads. And then all of a sudden there's 9 heads. Ah, fuck, Jerry, get up. Jerry's blowing somebody. I mean, it's just, that's the way it is and in prison, but they don't view it as homosexuality. No, they view it that they're there, and
they're having needs met. They're having needs met.
That's right. So, and you can have very manly men finding comfort in the arms of another man, and
Spartans did it.
Who did?
The Spartans.
The Spartans?
Oh God, yeah, Jesus, yeah. If you ever look into it, if you ever look into it, like, this is the thing. All those, particularly in the Greek cultures,
yeah,
it was not necessarily that it was encouraged, but it wasn't frowned upon or discouraged. It was sort of like anything. Yeah. It's like, okay, I don't want to. You do what you're going to do, but yeah, they were the brothers in arms.
It doesn't surprise me now that I think about it
because they oiled themselves up a lot with this. They would use.
You're watching too many movies.
Well, that's how they would clean themselves. They didn't use water. They would oil and they would scrape it off with a stick, and they get their buddy to do it.
Sounds
braid each other's hair.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Well, they were taken from like being young children, and they were like trained to be self-sufficient and killers, and they were all boys. So what do you do? I mean, there's no girls. So
Spartan culture had a very much you married and had kids because it was your duty to do so.
Yeah.
It was, and that doesn't mean there wasn't. Oh, that was always the case, but that was right. You were paired up in that. So yeah, the whole bunch of dudes hanging out. The Spartans, look into it. It's not. Yeah. That was my 3rd year of university, classical Greek civilizations. Jeez, Stretcher spent an awful lot of time talking about that.
You learn something new every day. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, whatever floats your boat. That's what I look at.
So he did well in prison. So the takeaway from this is he really did well. He was 10 years. He was supposed to be there for 10 years. How long did he actually serve, Phil?
It was like 18 months. It was a short stay. Like 10 years, he's out shy of a year.
That's not even a third of his sentence. Like, no. What's the rules for probation?
Well, for probation, usually you have to. I mean, for Canada, it's a third actually, a third now. And then you can apply.
It's like a third. Now I think usually you get 2 for 1 credit any time spent prior to sentencing. So
time served is not always the case though, right?
And I didn't see anything that said his 18 months included time served. It was
and trials back then would have been a lot quicker, I'm sure. There wasn't the backlog of everything like now.
He tried an insanity plea with this, right?
He sure did. He said he had multiple personalities.
Well, and they diagnosed him as psychopathy.
Yeah.
Well, they were like, we're pretty sure he's got an antisocial personality disorder. He's a psychopath.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not. He knows what he's doing.
I don't know. Yeah, he's one or the other. Well, before he gets out of jail, though, his dad dies. Okay. And he loses his fucking shit. And what does he do? He beats the shit out of a few of the lady boys in the prison. Because there's always those, even back then, there would have been very feminine.
So I didn't read about the beating of the lady boys in prison, but
there was a few that he just.
I think that would hurt his probation chance.
You would have thought, but he was so well liked, even by the warden. Like he was friends with the warden.
Oh, sorry, parole, not probation.
Yeah, well, probation. Yeah, so probation is something you're generally given if you don't go to prison.
Probation is a sentence. Yeah. Parole is after you've been sentenced.
That's right. But you have. This guy who's able to make friends fucking wherever he goes. So who knows? But he did get violent, and I read about it. Like he beat a few of these guys, and whether or not the guards turned a blind eye because they liked him.
And his cooking.
And especially his cooking.
Maybe he should do a cookbook.
Hey, you know what? Guards eat exactly what inmates eat.
Jesus Christ.
Anybody out there listening? No, they eat fucking great. And actually, one of the biggest complaints in prisons is that we're fed too much. You give us too much food. The average inmate puts on within the first year, 15 pounds. They're getting 3 squares plus snacks, and there's a canteen, and you get a certain. So yeah, and the guards eat all the same shit the inmates eat.
I can't relate. I can't relate to prisoners being overfed, but when I was in the military,
yeah,
I never ate so well in my life. Now, mind you, my days started at 5 and ended at 11 at night, and there was a lot of carrying heavy things, marching.
Get it in you.
Get it in, Get it in you.
Get it in you.
But it was great, I tell you.
That's
so
good.
Tasty.
Well, yeah, but these are, they're institutions, and there is a budget for it. And I mean, America is different than Canada. Canada is a very different prison system.
This would have been back before they contracted all the prison system out, right? So these would have been state-run institutions.
There was a state, even state penitentiaries now in the States are state-run.
I thought they were. I thought they contracted.
No, I don't. I'll have to look into that, but I don't.
Yeah, my understanding is it's one of the big controversies that these contractors take over. They take the contracts for the prisons, and then they do things like charge you $40 a minute to make a phone call.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works because a lot of these guys that are in state penitentiaries are serving enormous sentences, like they're ward life. So, like you take a Detroit state penitentiary. When I did a tour of it back in the 90s when I was in college, and basically, like there were 600 lifers, and they're just mingled with everybody, right? But these guys don't give a shit about anything. Like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna add more time on a 100-year sentence?
They can take. You can lose privileges, but generally speaking, it's like they're not getting out.
Yeah,
they're not getting out.
So that makes them very dangerous. Right? It's a very dangerous place where we don't have at any one time that many inmates in one prison. Right?
Sounds like a powder keg, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This is why in the zombie apocalypse movies we all lose because the prisons open up and now all these murderers are out and released. And they're the ones that survive.
Well, and that's what they say. The meek will inherit the earth. Right. Well, the meek. Who are the meek? Well, they're the criminals or the underbelly. They're the people that are used to surviving. And then you take us. We're soft, man. I like my bed.
So
I like meals and stuff.
I just completed a game for the PlayStation 4 called Days Gone, and essentially the premise is not zombie. Think like 28 Days kind of zombie apocalypse, but with a virus, and they're not zombies. They're just crazy mutated freaks.
Right.
And you play this biker, right? And everybody you meet, like you might meet one person who's a vet, but everybody else is like, I was ex-military. I was a criminal scumbag. Like everybody who's not one of those, they basically died.
Yeah. But why is that? Well, I'll tell you why. Because people are weak. They're not used to, to adapt to a situation. Like, let's say there was a shit hits the fan sort of, which I would love to do an episode on something like that. We'll get a prepper in or something and have them like go full prep on us. But it's true. Like, what are you willing to do to survive? Like Gacy was like, look I'm going to fucking just be the best I can be at being a cook.
I'm going to adapt to the situation. Adapt to the situation.
Yeah. I'm not the biggest guy. He wasn't intimidating at all. Like if you see pictures of him, he's not a large, intimidating guy. He is a frumpy, small.
He's a big. He's not a small guy, but he's a big fat guy.
He's not really that big. He's not. I don't think. I'm going to check his height. 5'8", 5'10". I don't know.
5'8". I thought he was taller than that. Let me see.
Check his height. I'm not sure, but he didn't. Everyone describes him as sort of like
5'9".
So that's not that tall.
He also votes Democratic, in case you're wondering.
Well, obviously, he's a serial killer.
He's a serial killer. System works.
We want to keep things light and airy. We don't want to go hard right. We want to say laws that are loose.
So it's 18 months. He's back out.
He's back out
after being a superstar in prison.
Kid, gone.
Yeah, they apparently they'd left after the moment the charges came in, she handed him divorce papers and said, bye-bye.
Yeah. I mean, she's totally like, you raped a child. So, we're gone. We're out of here. That's a pretty standard, I would think.
It's a reasonable reaction.
Yeah.
I don't think marriage counseling is going to help with that.
No. So he fucks off back to Chicago and moves in with his mom. What everybody does when they get charged with sodomy, you know.
Yeah, and apparently he has to report to his parole officer.
Which none of that's a problem. He follows all the rules. And then he starts a contracting company.
PDM.
PDM. PDM contracting. And it does really well. And he's a great salesman. Of course he is. You know, he's a psychopath. And then he's able to buy himself a home, and for him and his mother, I guess, and they move in. And
so his annual revenue with PDM by 1978 was over 200,000. So this is 1978. So 200,000.
That's a lot of dough.
That's a lot of dough for, like, you're doing pretty good at that point.
Yeah, and he's loved by everybody. So he's not just. He's now involved in like a lot of community things. He's
a real pillar.
He's for sure, and he actually does things for the police force. He, like he's helping with raising money for this and that and the next thing. And then, like he's also saying, on my days off, I'm going to be Pogo the Clown.
Which apparently Pogo the Clown was something he drew up when he was in prison the first time, right? Like that's...
I'm not sure, because he says that in one of the interviews
things I read,
watched,
he would draw it up, Pogo, like that. Yeah. He sort of sketched it and then said, hey, when I get out, and when he got out, he said, maybe I should...
Yeah, so his description of what the clown was to him was him being able to sort of leave his body and sort of relive a youthful time. Like which you kind of go, whoa, and it was like an expression of his childhood, and it was very joyful for him, and
apparently he was very much into the role. Like you have kids bouncing, like kids bouncing off his knee. He'd be the clown, like the archetypical clown.
Yeah, he would giggle and do all sorts of weird things, and he really got into the role because I think psychologically, he was in a different time. Like,
pictures. Have you seen some of the pictures?
Oh yeah, they're fucking terrifying. It's terrifying.
That's not a funny clown. That's not like Saul. That's the French clown who would teach us French.
No,
it's growing up on CBC or TVO. No, this is like. Yeah. No,
there's a lot of effort put into this.
A lot of effort. A lot of effort.
Crocheted weird hats and.
The face paint is like something out of, I don't know, Mad Max.
Yeah, like it, and he's terrifying. Like it's you see him without makeup and you go, he's nothing special. But you put makeup on that bastard, and holy Jesus, that changes the game right there.
Now, do you think he would have the same notoriety? I mean, given what he did and the number of people, if he hadn't been known as the Killer Clown?
Oh yeah, I think. That just makes.
That's an icing. That's a cherry on top.
Yeah, that's a cherry on top of he racked up 33 bodies. I mean, that they know of, they found. There could be more.
So he was pretty. So he confessed. So that's the thing, because I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Let's not go there because we haven't even got to the first victim.
We haven't got to the first. That's right. He's his first murder victim.
So he meets a woman also. And she has children. So I think that's important too. Like he's trying to kind of build this family, back to where.
Back into, because he wants to be the pillar of the community and he's adapting to his environment and the environment says, I need a beard. So I've got to have a wife and a family of kids and that way I'm beyond suspicion.
That's right. And he's already plotting what to do. When he finds this kid, what's his name? Tim McCoy. And
poor Tim.
Yes, poor Tim. So Tim is basically, he finds, and Gacy's smart, right? Like he's no stoop. And he knows, like, if I go to a bus station, and people getting off the bus and I can offer them a ride and show them down and all this other stuff. And he does just that. And he brings this kid, Tim McCoy, 16 years old, I think at the time. Yeah, 16. And brings him back to his house and, he has sex with him and then kills him.
Okay, so what I read, Tim McCoy. So what I read for Tim. So
he stabs him. Sorry,
I read something a little different. So first off, there was no there was no molestation. So now this is again. Remember, this is I guess Gacy trying to make himself seem more like, hey, this was all a complete accident. So apparently, the story he told was, you pick this kid up, I said, hey, you need a place to stay tonight because you're waiting for your bus tomorrow. You stay at my place. I'll get you back. Did the tour of the city, gets him home. And this kid was so grateful for this, decided in the early morning hours, he was going to go off and cook breakfast for Gacy.
Oh.
Okay. Wait. Here's where it gets weird.
Jesus.
He then Tim went upstairs to wake Gacy up and tell him, I got breakfast downstairs. How many pieces of toast do you want? But still had the knife in his hand.
Yeah.
Gacy thought Tim was coming to stab him to death. They struggled, and he basically wound up stabbing Tim to death.
Yeah,
and then
we have very different.
This is what I read about this. And then Gacy realizes later, after what did he say? He basically felt like a huge sense of like, oh, this is where he gets his taste for murder. He killed this kid, and he realizes, oh, this is the best feeling ever. And then goes downstairs and realizes, oh, he was cooking me breakfast, and he just
he admitted to fantasizing about murdering people for a long time.
Yes,
right?
I know, but
this, I don't know. I didn't.
This is what I read, and I read this in two separate places. So the question is whether or not they're both.
Yeah, and I watched a few documentaries, and I read about them, and there's really no. That's his word. And he's a known.
Of course.
Fucking
this is the guy who's gonna make himself. This is the guy who wants to make himself the victim, right?
Yeah.
He's going to go off.
This is Tim McCoy's fault because
if he hadn't walked up with a knife in his hand.
Yeah, I never would have, raped and raped him afterwards. It was already there. Yeah. Apparently, he was killed with a kitchen knife of some sort.
Yeah, and apparently the kitchen knife again from the story. This is Gacy. Because they never, I think he was buried in this was another. So he buried this kid in his crawl space. Buried in the crawl space.
Yeah.
But how this all happened again? This is the one case where apparently Gacy said this is what happened, and it's different than all the other times where he lured kids in and killed them.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think his intent was, or that's what he says. My intent was not to do any of this. I was just being a great guy.
Hanging out at the bus station.
Looking for. Yeah, I know.
Right.
I know.
So, yeah, exactly. I know. We'll leave this up to the viewers.
That's right.
We're going to do a viewer poll.
Was it a mishap?
Yeah. Was he almost murdered? Or did he rape and murder this young 16-year-old boy? Yeah. So July.
Okay, we're going to have to get every time you say the word rape, we're going to have to do a little ding, ding, because you keep saying that word. You've got to come up with different words.
Sexual abuse.
Molestation.
That's a good one.
Yeah, right. Inappropriate touching. You use that once, but it's the rape. You keep coming back to the rape. I think you've said it. We said it just in the last 5 minutes about.
We'll have to count, but I do like using the word. Like rapier or yeah. Anyway,
did you ever see This Is the End?
No. Oh, I did. That's
right. With it's like James Franco.
Yeah, it's all those guys. Yeah.
And there's the one scene where they talk about what's her name? God. Was it Hermione? The actress who played Hermione Granger?
Yeah.
And they basically talk about rapey vibes. Who's giving off rapey vibes?
Rapey vibes. Whatever that is. How creepy. Oh God, I don't know if I'll be able to say this kid's name. So, yeah, what was that, 1972? Apparently he doesn't kill again until 1975, right?
Then he kind of goes on a tear.
Yeah, and that's Butlovich is his name, or Butlovich, something like that. Can you find that name? Because I'm having a hard time saying it. And he worked.
I stopped at the first and the last. So my only record. There's a lot of victims in between.
Well, this one's important because
the first one and here's the last one.
This is where he first uses the magic trick. So this kid was 16, worked for Gacy's construction company. he invites him over to the house to have a couple drinks. Kid thinks nothing of it. And then this is where this is one of Gacy's famous tricks. And what he does is he says, "You want to see a magic trick?" And the kid, "Of course I want to see a magic trick." So kids listening, don't fucking let anyone put fucking handcuffs on you ever.
Don't go over to strange people's houses and drink.
Also a good point, but don't let anyone put handcuffs on you.
Don't ever put handcuffs on you.
Yeah.
Don't go in a box.
She, don't go in a box. Don't get tied to a bed. None of these things, if you're listening, because it's always bad.
It's the PSA brought to you by Ordered Chaos.
By Ordered Chaos. So the kid's like, so John Wayne Gacy puts the cuffs on, and he's like, you know, he puts them and makes the kid check, and like, and all of a sudden he's out of the cuffs. And the kid's like, "Whoa." And John's like, "Do you want me to teach you the trick?" And the kid's like, "Yeah, I do." Fuck. So he puts the cuffs on the kid, and he's like, "You know how you get out of these cuffs?" And the kid's like, "No." And he pulls up the key, and he's like, "With this." And then, well, the rest, he's subdued. I mean, the rest is history. You're in handcuffs, and he sexually tortures the boy. So this isn't just a murder or whatever. This is the first time that he now is living out these weird fantasies that he has.
And it's all downhill from here.
That's right. And he strangles him to death. So this is the actual, and then this sets the tone basically for every other murder that he has. Like it's one trick or another that he uses on these unsuspecting kids. And typically their ages are between 15 and 18. Like they're young, you know, they're just babies. So, yeah, so he kills in 1977, approximately 19 victims. So
the number I have by the 1970, what is it?
7?
Is it 77? Is that the last one?
So
1978 is the last one I've got.
Okay, but that's 32. But that's why it's important to look at 77 because he's already killed now 19 people. Like he really goes from 75 to 77. He's up to 19 victims, right? So it works out that he's killing like 2 every 3 weeks.
And he's being very predatory about it. So he's not necessarily, as my father would say, shit where he eats. He's actually being pretty good that he's picking off people that are not from the immediate area, right? So this is the Greyhound bus station thing, right?
Yeah, he's going in. Yeah, he's
hunting. He's hunting a little further afield.
Yeah, and the police are aware that there's something going on in this, just sort of, because I mean, everything is departmentalized, right? So you have police departments, especially in the States. They don't know what's going on.
Don't forget, this would have been 1970s. I mean, if you wanted to send something to somebody, you'd have to mail it to them, or I think they had faxes.
They would have had faxes back then, yeah, for sure.
But there's not necessarily the link network. And even now, because of your state, federal, and municipal levels, none of them are talking, except when they absolutely must. So
yeah, and like when Canada switched to a generic criminal system, right? When you get a CPIC done, the CPIC system. So once that happened, you know, it was kind of like, oh, I run your name. Well, just because you're not on, you know, say Ottawa's list, you know, it's wherever in Canada.
And any encounters you've had,
any sexual or otherwise. By 1978, 1978, that dude has killed 32 people. Mm-hmm. That's a number you were, yeah.
Yeah, his last victim is number 33.
That's right.
Robert Peast. Heist.
Yes. And
this is where he makes this is where his big mistake was.
Yeah. One thing I want to mention is that he doesn't miss a beat killing all these people. He doesn't miss a day of work.
No.
He does, his business is thriving. He is, you know, out there selling the shit out of his business. He's actively involved in his community. And he's fucking doing more birthday parties than he's ever done as Pogo the Clown. Like, I don't know where this guy fit this into his schedule, but it was in there. So he's leading this totally, you know, obscure life. And then, you know, behind closed doors, he's raping. And I said it again, raping. and killing
Ding. So you'll see a little counter every time Phil says it.
It's kind of what he does. He's raping and killing people.
He said it again.
It's his
said it again, Phil.
His moda operandi.
We're losing viewers every time you say that.
Damn it, rape. Rape it's an old term. It's sexual assault now. They don't even have rape anymore. Rape, whatever. So yeah, this kid. Purpose. Yeah, Robert Peast, and so he works for Nissan Pharmacy.
Yeah, so Gacy's company, PDM Contractors, eventually gets into one of their specialty areas is renovating pharmacies.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the areas they actually get into, and that's where they say, well, that's how the two were tied together.
Well, from what I read, so he was there to quote a contract. But now I wasn't sure. I didn't realize that he actually renovated pharmacies. So
yeah, he actually
ties that together for me. Okay.
Yeah.
So he was there to quote a job. He meets this kid, and he used to, lure kids in all the time by saying, "Hey, you want to come work for me? You make more money. It's a way better job." And so he did this with this Peast kid, and he becomes 33. Now, one of the different things is he did shit in his own backyard, right? His Nissan Pharmacy was where he was, and there was a witness who saw that the last person that this Robert Peast talked to was Gacy.
The kid's mom dropped him off at the pharmacy just before he talked to Gacy.
Yeah, that's right. And so now the parents, they go to the police. Now Gacy is on their radar. Like they're like, and what happens next?
Don't keep me in suspense, Phil.
Okay, I don't want to do all the talking.
You're good at it though, Phil, and you.
So they do a search warrant. They want to have they basically are like they say, okay, let's check things out. They find a little receipt, I believe.
Yeah, they find a receipt that belonged to actually, I think, a friend of Peast of Roberts.
So
it basically links him to Gacy's house.
Yeah, it's not enough to actually do anything, but then now they're like hyper sensitive to the situation.
Yes, and this is where the money starts to pile up with the the surveillance they start dropping on them.
They drop tons of surveillance. That's right. And he's fucking playing with them. Like I watched this one documentary and he's like buying them all like meals and stuff. Like they're following him everywhere and he would like pick up their tabs at like the like restaurants and things like that, right? And because they'd be in there watching them eating, and he'd buy their meal, just to like rubbing them in faces. But yeah, they also found, I believe it was a ring of another victim.
Yes, one of
that was another reason.
The school ring, I think, of one of them.
Ring. Yeah. And that's what really set the tone for them to go, okay, this is our fucking guy. We just don't know how we're gonna. And they were applying for a second warrant to be able to, and Gacy being such a fucking confident dude, he invites the cops to his house. Did you know that? Like while they were before they got the second warrant, and he's inviting them over to have coffee and shit, and they smell something really weird, and basically coming from where the crawl space is. A number of dead bodies, right? And that was, by then they had got the warrant.
And then he actually confesses at that point.
To his lawyer. So before he does anything, so they want to get him, they put they want to get him before he kills himself. They figure he's going to kill himself, right? Because the evidence is fucking staggering.
But he's so fucked up in the head right now. He is completely and utterly removed from reality. Like
that's right. Yeah, he's like, I'm going to go to my lawyer, and he tells the lawyer everything, and the lawyer's like, yeah, what now? Okay. And he says to the lawyer, and I got it written down here, he's been the judge, jury, and executioner of many, many people. Quotes. And the lawyer's like just chilled. Like, thinking, fuck, am I next? And then the police apprehend him and he's arrested. It's such a weird story.
And he actually tried the insanity defense part 2
again
to skirt
yeah,
the
oh
death.
yeah.
Now he was trying to skirt the death penalty at this point versus.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there were so many counts.
Yeah. He, you know what his last meal was?
No, I don't.
Comes back to the beginning. Bucket of KFC.
No way.
Yeah. Do you know what his last words were?
Finger looking good.
Kiss my ass.
Kiss my.
Apparently, that's what he said before he was death by lethal injection.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, out of all of this, we talk. I mean, I'm not trying to show, I guess, the bright lighting, I suppose, or the lighter side. Do you know the Amber Alert was put out? That was started because of his defense lawyer actually pushed for legislation to institute the Amber Alert. Yeah. So let's 1 second here. Sam Armati, who was one of Gacy's 2 defense lawyers, authorized procedures that were incorporated by the Illinois General Assembly into the Missing Child Recovery Act of 1984.
Wow.
Yeah, I did not know that. He said the lawyer said his inspiration for pushing for this was basically Gacy.
Which makes sense.
Makes sense, right?
These were children. I mean,
it used to be 72 hours. You wouldn't have. It would be 72 hours before police would start a search
missing person. That's right.
Missing child.
Yeah.
You have a kid gone missing, and you're going to wait what?
3 days.
3 days?
No. And can you imagine how frustrating that is as a parent? I couldn't even imagine. You know, and then people are usually you read this in the news, like your cell phone goes off when there's an alert, and then you get all these people that are pissed off because their fucking phone went off.
I was a little irritated when the COVID alert thing went off for the stay-at-home order. I was a little alerted. I was like, okay, I understand the Amber Alert.
I'll give you that one. But like with the kids, you know, I think that it's like, dude, it's a minor inconvenience for the fact that it could help somebody. You know?
It is, but they need to tweak the system so that they are able to target it better, because I'll get Amber Alerts for something that's 8 hours away.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's like I'll get something.
Is it Ontario wide?
It's Ontario wide. So that's I'll also get, so unfortunately, because of where I sit, I'm near Ottawa's near Quebec, so I also get the Quebec Amber Alerts too.
Oh, shit.
So I'll get that. I'll get hammered with that, and I'm like, I'm not in Montreal. Mind you, Montreal's only 2 hours away, so I guess it is kind of.
Yeah, I mean, if they're gonna flee with somebody.
Not now with the COVID lockdown orders. They've got people on the bridges. They'd have to identify why they'd have to say where they're going.
Well, and Ontario too, right? We've shut down our borders. Is that?
I'd shut it down is maybe an overstatement. To say you might be challenged if you're crossing a border into Ontario is more accurate. We haven't shut it down, meaning you can come in and out, but you're going to be challenged, and you better have a good reason for doing it.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow.
So one thing I want to come back to is what you talked about with how the timeline. So this was let's say 8 years. 8 years?
Yeah. Well, his first it's actually more like 6 years, right? Okay. I mean, well, no, if you include his very first victim that he did not murder.
I'm going to say, let's go with the murder victim. So we're looking at what?
72
to 78. 78 to 33 is the body count, right?
33. That's right.
Yeah. So that is actually compared to previous serial killers, that is actually a fairly truncated timeline.
Oh, very.
Right?
Yeah, like Dahmer killed people for like a decade.
True, but Dahmer wasn't previous, right? So
no, Dahmer came later. But
Dahmer came later, and same thing like that. Now the Green River Killer,
H.H. Holmes, that guy, or no? That's a different guy.
No, H.H. Holmes, that was the hotel guy, wasn't it? Was it the Green River Killer? Was he was the cop that was killing people, I think. Anyway, this is not a serial killer podcast, but my point is 33 over 6 years.
Right.
That's a pretty tight timeline.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of people. And that's why they say, but you know, his second victim. So you go, it's not really, he didn't kill again until 75.
True. So he actually, it's more like 75. 3 years, 33 over.
That's why they say like he was killing every 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah. To get that number. And it's staggering that he never got caught. Yeah. It's almost like, holy fuck, like how many people have to go missing before you go?
But you know how everybody now wants immediate gratification?
Yeah.
So mass shootings. mass shootings, the body counts you can rack up in a mass shooting, pale that by comparison. Look at that Las Vegas shooting, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Well, there's just one now in Indianapolis at the FedEx.
Was that 9? 8? Yeah,
I think it was 8 that the last I saw.
Okay.
You know.
Right, and that's an hour.
Oh yeah, I mean,
like it's.
But you're not hearing the same amounts of serial killers. Like we don't hear about, these like you said, the H.H. Holmes or BTK or any of these.
Maybe because they don't need to. Like I said, now they can go off if they want to get their kill on.
Maybe these are the guys. Yeah, well,
the new serial killers are the mass murderers. Like, are the?
I don't know about that, because these guys did things very personal. Like John Wayne Gacy is very personal that what he would do to these people. You have to be a special kind of sick, I think, to do that.
So when you're talking special kind of sick, let's come back to the Dark Triad for a second. So
sure.
We've got somebody who clearly is a psychopath. They don't feel remorse for their actions. This was a man who could fake emotions at the drop of a hat, and apparently never really admitted response. Like he confessed to it, but he didn't really, like, there was no remorse. No remorse.
That's right. Yeah. And it wasn't his fault in a lot of ways. Like, he almost mitigated fault.
Well, again, bad childhood, right? Like this is where we start going back where, like he was making me breakfast and I thought he was coming to kill me. And then that's when my life went off the rails. We've got Machiavellianism. So this is a guy who could manipulate people. For sure. Right? You saw him in prison, how he blended in. The guy was a chameleon. The guy could go into an area and adapt and adjust to whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Whatever it needed to be. Now, the third part of the Dark Triad is narcissism.
He was definitely a narcissist.
So anybody who wants to be called the Colonel.
But he loved the power, apparently. He loved to be the boss.
He always moved to positions of power. And this is where the scary thing, we talked about this in a previous episode when we're dealing with people in positions of leadership. Some of them score fairly high on all three of these things, the higher up the corporate ladder you go, right? Because these are, ambition is, you see the stuff he did, right? Let's go back to the JCs, right? He clearly identified a problem that they had an issue with recruiting. I don't think he went in there saying, how can I twist this? Ha 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 ha. No, he was like, oh, we need more people. We need more recruits. No problem. I got it.
Well, and he went, so how do I become a better JC? You get more recruits. Oh, all right. How do I get to the top? You get more recruits. The more people you recruit. All right. It never says in the rule book that I can't have orgies and all sorts of shit.
Didn't say I couldn't do these things.
Right? Yeah. So you remove accountability from someone's mind or reason. They can do pretty much anything. Right.
So to call back to a previous episode, Rise of the Machines. We talked about this, right? Where you have, like, you let machines learn. They say, well, wait a second, I can do these terrible things and this is the best outcome. Well, yeah, but that's immoral. Yeah, but we're not talking about morality. We're talking about outcomes. If the goal is to have more people, well, if I have blow parties and orgies and that, turns out people show up for that. That's what people want.
Turns out they're very popular. Yeah. Yeah, I don't, it's almost, I think he would have been manipulating all the psychiatry. Like, that's the problem, is that.
So he tried to manipulate. So his very first one, back with the Donald Voorhees thing, he tried to get an insanity plea, which is weird that he would try to get it for that offense. But 10 years does sound like a fairly big chunk of time, right?
Yeah. Even though he only did
18 months, which I'd be curious to see how the hell that, like, were they running out of room in prison?
I don't know. And that's the thing. Did they not have a record of his, okay, well, boys are going missing, and Gacy was, charged with raping that.
So there's another use of the word. But
what would you like me to say? What is your preferred word?
You'll have to,
for forcing yourself on another sexually.
It's the idea that at the time, communication amongst us. So there was no National Sex Offender Registry, right? Because national registries didn't exist.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Right? None of these registries existed. So they would have no idea. And he was smart about moving around. Like he didn't stay in the same spot. Now, again, he did move to his mom's place. It just.
Well, he had to. He didn't have anywhere to go.
Didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah. I thought there was one where somebody got away. They managed to fight him off. There was one that got away.
I didn't see it, but full disclosure, I didn't want to look too deeply into you can't look into this without getting down some dark rabbit holes, which is why I don't like serial killers.
Hey, easy.
Hey, that was my criminal psychology, man. We talked about this stuff, and I was like, yeah, there's some really screwed up people in the world.
Yeah, there is.
I don't encounter them.
Well, yeah. Educate yourself as best you can. Don't put on handcuffs.
Don't put on handcuffs. Right. If you learn one thing, don't go into a box. Don't get into a car with strangers.
Mm-hmm. These are all important rules. Yeah. Well,
that was the problem, by the way, with some of the messaging they were giving out.
Mm-hmm.
The stranger danger messaging.
Right.
So kids were expecting stranger danger. Oh, here's this dark guy in a trench coat, like a crackhead or something, whatever.
Not Pogo the Clown.
Not Pogo the Clown. He's not a stranger. It's Pogo the Clown.
Well, stranger danger, wouldn't that have been later on? Wouldn't that have been like the 80s? That'd be our era.
I think there's overlap in the 70s, but that was the problem with the messaging, is it didn't account for these sort of situations where, you've got the guy's completely friendly. He's asking to help me find his puppy.
Well, yeah, must be nice.
Must be nice. He told me his
name.
I like
puppies.
He told me his name. He's not a stranger. He's Pogo the Clown.
Well, yeah. And you find that a lot of the, pedophiles are out there. Well, look at Epstein. But, like and subscribe. You bet. But they're out there. And you try your best to keep your kids safe. And, you have to wonder, someone like Gacy, if they targeted your kid, like, what have you taught your child to ward that off?
It was a different time. Like people, I know people still hitchhike now, but I don't think they hitchhike to any near the levels they used to.
Oh, you know what? It's funny because I have to go up the highway to work, and not far. Like my shop is close, but I see people hitchhiking probably every other day to go to Sudbury, and it always amazes me. It'll be like a young guy, young girl, or sometimes two of them. And I think to myself, what the fuck? And the OPP will often pick them up too. Right? I don't think you're supposed to be hitchhiking.
No, I'm pretty sure there's some stuff but
yeah.
And you're holding out a thumb. You're holding a thumb for the cops to pick you up.
No, but if they see them on the side of the road with a sign, and that's usually what they have, is like sign says Sudbury or.
So we'll see that in Ottawa. We'll see at all the exits, the Queensway exits.
It's an exit, yeah, because
they'll have them if they're not asking for money. They're saying, Arm Prior.
I'm going to Arm Prior. Yeah. Okay. Well, what are we doing next week?
Oh, wow. So you've inspired me so much with your depravity discussions here.
Jack the Ripper. Said rape a lot. What? Jack the Raper?
The Ripper.
Oh,
that counts, by the way. I want to see another ding. That counts.
Ding, ding. Ding, ding, ding.
So Jack the Ripper. So unlike John Wayne Gacy, who is a known quantity, we know like the amount of stuff out there, which is it's sick, but there's no mystery to it, right? There's no, it's disturbing. Again, why we all hate clowns now. Again,
I think we hated them before.
True, but it's everything. When you look at all the, tropes about.
Tropes.
Yeah, well, the whole, molesting clowns kind of thing. Yeah. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
But Jack the Ripper, however, mystery. Classy. Lots of stuff. They're still to this day they just still don't know who he is. They suspect they know who he was.
I've watched some stuff. I really find him interesting. I don't know a huge amount about him either.
I only know a bit. Like, again, it's one of those, you read some stuff, but you can really go down rabbit holes.
Yeah. And
nowhere near the body count. Nowhere near the body count.
Yeah, 6 or 7, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but he kind of started it.
Well, he was the one, and again, blame the press. I don't think he called himself. I think they named him versus him. We'll find this out. Stay tuned for next week. We'll find out. I don't know how he got his name.
That's right.
Whether it's from the letters he wrote and he signed it.
He wrote to the Scotland Yard. He teased them. He's a prick that way.
And this is where not a new thing, right? Like the Zodiac Killer did the same thing.
He did. Some fucked up people out there. And on that note,
yes, Jack the Ripper next week.
Jack the Ripper next week. Well, thanks for watching. I'm Phil. This is my co-host Corey, and we are Ordered Chaos Podcast. Like and subscribe. Check us out.
Like and subscribe.
Have a good night, friends.
Take care, everyone.